It is currently July of 2020, and as I survey the immense damage that the formidable novel coronavirus known as COVID-19 has wrought upon our lands, the verse in Hosea chapter 4 verse 6 comes to mind and troubles me. That verse essentially reads as follows: "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children." Now, before I continue, it is important to look at this verse in the context of the chapter. As you can see at the very beginning of the chapter, that is Hosea chapter 4, God is bringing forth a complaint or a charge against his people, in this case, Israel. Why? Hosea 4 verse 1 gives us a clue. "Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel, for the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land." Let me repeat this part again. "Because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land." God essentially seems to be saying that truth does not matter in the land, mercy, a noble trait which is, by the way, focused on others, does not exist in the land, and that there is also no knowledge of God in the land. Put yet another way, truth, kindness toward others, and knowledge of God is missing in the land. Take a look around you. Whatever your political affiliation, take a good, long, honest look and ask yourself if truth, kindness, and God is being pursued in general. It doesn't matter what political party you belong to. All politicians, political parties, and individuals have fallen short in this regard. Truth is not honored, mercy or kindness is not pursued, and aside from nominal mentions and proclamations of God, a reasonable understanding of God hardly seems to exist in the life of the average person. So, although the grievance that God makes in Hosea 4 verse 6 is really against Israel, let's come back to that verse. "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children." It would be fair to consider that knowledge, quote unquote, as mentioned here, especially considering the context, would refer to the knowledge of God. But the Hebrew word for knowledge here is hada'at, excuse my pronunciation, which according to Strong's dictionary means knowledge, perception, skill, discernment, understanding, or wisdom. So, even if the knowledge mentioned in the verse is a reference to a knowledge of God, one has to allow for the possibility that the word hadad implies a deeper level of understanding, wisdom, perception, or knowledge of God. In any case, almost definitely, the word does not suggest a casual or superficial understanding or knowledge of God alone. Instead, the word suggests a deeper, solid understanding of a specific area of study, in this case, God. But may I also suggest that knowledge of God is not just knowledge that we derive from the Bible, but also the knowledge embedded in the natural world that God has created. Knowledge of the natural world that God has created, to me anyway, includes the tried and tested truths studied and analyzed by some of humanity's great scientific minds. I know, many of these minds may be atheistic or agnostic, but I would also ask that you keep in mind Proverbs 2 verse 6. All wisdom comes from the Lord, and so do common sense and understanding. So, whether it's complex concepts about the natural world like general relativity, basic mathematical proofs, or proven medical advice from esteemed specialists and experts, keep in mind that this knowledge, in many cases, already existed well before our great human academics, scientists, and researchers came across them. And in many cases, even before the first human walked this planet. These great human minds simply articulated truths that were found through mathematical or other accepted forms of scientific research and philosophical expression. Frankly, to me, all lasting knowledge that is tried, tested, and true ultimately comes from God anyway. So regardless of whether we are acquiring knowledge of the universe that God has created or understanding of Him through the Bible, knowledge must be acquired and understood to properly apply that knowledge in the right way, at the right time, and in the right circumstances. All of this brings me back to Hosea 4 verse 6 and why it troubles me. As you can see, the charges that God brings up earlier in the chapter against Israel could well apply to us in the United States too. Furthermore, against the backdrop of COVID-19 and considering the immense amount of scientific and medical advice given to us through all major channels, including social media, particularly with regard to basic societal guidelines such as wearing masks or social distancing, etc., I am sad to say that we as a society have often ignored official health guidelines, imperfect as they are at times, in the name of freedom or something else perhaps, while ignoring the responsibilities that said freedom brings upon us. One has to only go to parks, major retail stores, and other public places to see this play out. Very often people don't wear masks or social distance, as it were. For a while, as the so-called curve flattened, people have been often quick to jump on conspiracy theories and take the advice of people who have no training or background in healthcare. And when opposing healthcare experts that contradict the medical advice of top infectious disease experts are found, we often find that opposing healthcare experts are no specialists in infectious diseases. People, often claiming rights related to freedom, often ignore the advice of medical authorities who have spent several decades in training and practice within the healthcare profession, and in particular in the study of infectious diseases. Wearing masks or social distancing, for example, is based on sound knowledge or scientific facts or truths. It is a kindness or mercy granted to those among us who are the weakest, because the immune compromised are in particular danger from COVID-19, a fact born from the study of tragic statistics related to COVID-19. Considering also, again, that true knowledge or wisdom comes from God anyway, and that we have ignored the skills of experienced physicians and medical experts, godly or worldly. Should we be surprised that we as a country are still struggling with what is often termed as the first wave of COVID-19, while many other countries are past the first wave or maybe waiting on the second wave. Dear listeners, do not be mocked. Seek truth. Be compassionate to your fellow human being, regardless of their background, and be wise. This teaching, a Christian teaching, mind you, was true in the pre-Christianity time frame of Hosea chapter 4, and it is still true thousands of years later in our case and in our time.